Good evening, everyone. Welcome to week 3 of the Black History Month speaker series hosted by the Center for Global Partnerships and Learning at Pepperdine University Graduate School of Education and Psychology. This month, we have been exploring resilience through reclaiming our narrative, Black history, Black stories, Black truth, Black power. And tonight's session brings that theme to life in a unique and meaningful way, through the voices of our own doctoral students from the Graduate School of Education and Psychology. As emerging scholars and leaders, Faith Saunders, Jay Onni, Erika Barnesford, Maya Hargett, and Corey McQueen, these students are actively shaping the future through their research, lived experiences, and commitments to education and advocacy. This discussion tonight will offer an opportunity to hear directly from them as they share the narratives that drive their work, their vision, and their impact. We are honored to have Reverend Dr. Sharletta Green as our moderator this evening. And of course, I would like to acknowledge Dr. Gabriela Miramontes, the director of the center, whose leadership continues to foster spaces for these vital conversations, much needed these times. And with that, I'll now turn it over to Reverend Dr. Sharletta Green to guide us through tonight's panel.
Thank you, Dr. Lena. So glad to be with you this evening. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So we're going to start. And the way we're going to do this is when we start asking questions, we're just going to ask each of the panelists as they answer the question to start out just by telling us who they are and what program they're in at Pepperdine, and then they can answer the question. But as we start, I actually want everybody just to take a deep breath and blow it out. Take a deep breath in, hold it for a couple of seconds, now blow it out. I want to honor the fact that we not only are here, but we stand on the shoulders of so many of the ancestors that have gone before us, who were in the same place that we find ourselves in today. I want to acknowledge that there has been brokenness and hurt and violence, and we have suffered violence in this country since the inception. This just foundational to who this country is, and we have to own that. It doesn't mean it has to be who we are. We have to own that that's part of the foundation. There's been a lot going on in the last few weeks. We've seen Project 2025 unrolled, and this Black History Month is so important because, as you know, they have been saying that, from now on, we aren't going to be able to celebrate. I keep telling folks, we Black 365, we're going to celebrate who we are, but formalized ways of doing this. And so we're going to have to be creative. We're going to have to do some other things. But I want to say tonight that I'm glad that you are here. I'm thankful that you've taken the time. I want this to be safe space for you to think, to breathe, to lament, as we have our conversation together. We're all in the same sinking ship, just from different vantage points. Tonight, I hope that as you leave this Zoom room and you go back to the spaces that you inhabit, into the lives that you are dealing with, that you will go back with a little bit of joy, some resources, and some actionable steps. And more importantly, that you will have stories that you can connect to, and then you can share your own stories to help other people build upon that, because that's what this has been about. Later on, we will put in the chat the updated book list, because the goal at the end of this month is for you to have a nice list of books to create your own library. They can erase whatever they want to from the public sphere, but they can't erase our story from who we are. And if we have our own books and our own libraries, we can keep the story going. Ashe? So let's start. So the first question, in one sentence, share why celebrating Black history, Black legacy, and stories are important, particularly in our lives today. And who would like to go first? Or do you want me to just call on
you? I'll go. This is Erika. Erika Barnesford. I'm basically a fourth year in the GSEP PhD program. I live in the Atlanta, Georgia area. I'm a political strategist. I have a background in advocacy. I work in a variety of community and political affairs forums and avenues. I am the executive director of a nonprofit. I'm the chair of the Equal Justice Initiative Community Collaborative here, a coalition that I have reflected on the pictures behind me. And then I'm also the president of our local NAACP. To answer that question, though, I think in one sentence, celebrating Black history is our legacy and our stories. It's essential because it not only honors the resilience and the brilliance of our ancestors, but it empowers us to like shape our future, where our identities and our contributions are recognized or celebrated, and it propels us through like this transformative fight for equity, and helping us to reshape the American society. And there was a conversation before we started this, and just as a reminder, we are in a position where those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. So we're seeing that now. So I think that, again, that what's essential is in celebrating this is honoring our ancestors and empowering ourselves.
Hi, thank you.
You're welcome.
Jay, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jayani Sly, or Dane, married name. I am a graduate of the Educational Leadership Administrative and Policy program, and I'm finishing my dissertation in the Global Leadership program. So just finished IRB, so in the data collection process. The reason why I think it's so important to, continue to celebrate Black history and Black legacy and like to share Black stories, our stories, is because, I'm an educator. I've been an educator primary through K through 12 for the last 10 years. And to educate our youth and inspire them, the future generation, we really need to help them protect and preserve the truth, our truth, and instill that in them in order for them to be the architects of change in the future instead of being subjects of suppression, which is what they're trying to make us. And it's just incredibly important to continue to share what we know, what we've been through, and where we need to go.
Okay, thank you. Corey?
Thank you, Dr. Green. My name is Corey McQueen. I'm a native of Los Angeles, California. I'm currently in my first year of my doctoral program, and the program that I am with is education with a focus of learning technology and design. I currently work at Charles Drew University. We recently became the fourth HBCU medical school, and we are the first HBCU west of Texas in California. So I'm proud of that. I attended Howard University, so there's a strong relationship between Charles Drew and myself, just coming from that. But to answer the question, why is it important we celebrate Black history and the legacy, and why it's particularly important today? Well, Black history is American history. And I feel that there's no other way you can get around not including Black history with the younger generations of today. I mean, the new administration is working very diligently to erase that part of history. But as Black people in America, it's our responsibility to carry that tradition and to educate our younger generations, because what they don't know will hurt them. And just to piggyback off of what Ms. Forrest said, that if we don't know our history, we are doomed to repeat it. And I really believe that that is the goal and the state of America, is to repeat things that we fought so hard, our ancestors fought so hard for us to overcome. So, like I said, it's important. Our history is important because our history is American history. It's not just Black history, it's the history of all Americans, and everyone should need to know, and everyone needs to have the opportunity and be accessible to know what history is concerning them. And regardless of what color you are, what race you are, if you are American, it is your history too. So that's why Black history is very vital.
Thank you. Thank you. So which one of our brilliant ladies wants to go next?
So my name is Faith Saunders.
Mhm.
I am a native of Southern California, born in Orange County, California, raised in Hollywood, California, but my roots are from Compton, California. I am presently in the doctoral program at Pepperdine University in the EDD, the K through 12 leadership program, my first year. Learning a lot, very appreciative of the program. And why it is important to share our Black stories is because if we don't share our history with our youth, it's going to get lost. Because there's so many people that want to bury it. And if we don't teach the youth our history, they're going to learn it from a different perspective. And I think it's important for our elders and us as elders and even the younger generation to inform youth of Black history and like my history or my parents' history or my grandparents' history, whether it be with my children or my family or your families, because we all have stories and they're all valid. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And certainly last but not least on this first question, Professor,
Yes,
how you doing?
I am Professor Mimi Hargett. I am a professor of behavioral and social science, particularly criminology and ethnicity, and how the law is administered to people of color. And a historian. I am the direct descendant of the Black Hargetts, the historic Hargett Street in Raleigh, North Carolina, and simultaneously the descendant of Frederick Alexander Hargett, who built the University of North Carolina, the White Hargetts. And that is why Black history and Black legacy is important. If not discovering and digging into our history, I would have never found that out. And so there are stories to be told. And I think it creates inclusion and equity for the future. So I do have a lot to talk about and to tell. And it is, as Corey said, an American story. Not that everybody is pleased about it, because the University of North Carolina is not. But I shall continue to tell these stories. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. So as we move into the next question, we know that art is really important. And it is one of the ways in which we have been telling our story for generations, not just here in the United States, not just as Black people, but who we are as human beings. And so last week, we kind of hit on the whole Kendrick Lamar experience at the Super Bowl and the meltdown of some people. But what I want to know is, what is the first work of art? Whether it was poetry or music, literature, painting, sculpture, etc. You remember from our culture, and what message did it communicate to you? And then is that message the same, or has it changed? I see Corey's hand up.
I didn't want to, yeah, so sorry. Go ahead, Corey, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to say something before I start?
No, go ahead, please. I just saw Erica's hand up since a while, but that's totally fine. You will
Oh,
go.
okay.
She
Okay,
will go
well, I'm
after.
gonna be quick because we were all schooled to keep our responses short.
Yeah.
And I'm trying diligently to do that. For me, I think what my first piece of art was, actually, it was a TV show. And so, for me, A Different World changed my life. I remember I was in elementary school. I was a young kid. And when I saw this show, I was like, oh my God, what school is this? I thought Hillman was a real university. I was determined to go to Hillman until I, found out later in life that it wasn't. But that ever since, I knew it since I was 12 years old, I wanted to go to Howard because of that show. It was because of Different World and I guess Bill Cosby's vision and Debbie Allen's vision that they had just to introduce and put it out there that, hey, there is a place for people that look just like me. I don't always have to go to a PWI. And so that inspired me. And my eye was on the prize ever since the 80s. I knew that I wanted to go to a HBCU, and that definitely shaped my view and my appreciation for my culture as a Black woman.
Mhm. Is that message the same today, or do you think it's changed?
For myself, it's the same. Now for the new generations, I can't so much speak. For the younger kids, I think with social media, it's a big distraction, and technology, social media has definitely distorted the vision, and it's taken away the focus on the positives. Like, the show's A Different World, and they're focusing on other things because nowadays social media the kids, they all are one. They feel like they're one. There's no like, celebration of Black, history or Latino history or Asian American history. Everybody just wants to be one, and everyone wants to be seen. So I definitely believe that it doesn't have the same effect on the generation today.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh,
Mhm.
thank you. So when I raised my hand a moment ago, first of all, Corey, I totally agree. When you just mentioned Different World, I thought, oh, well, I can remember that and the Cosby Show and how significant it was for us. But prior to that, there was another show that I thought you were gonna mention, and I'll say this, but I want just going back real quick. One of the things I find so interesting about as relates to the first question is the fact that there's a lot of cultural appropriation going on as well. It's like as much as we are criticized, as much as we are dogged, so many people are always trying to just naturally appropriate. And I was going to share that I actually saw a video of a young Asian singer, a guy who had on a Delta Sigma Theta jacket. Now, in the Black community, and if you're part of the Divine Nine, you know how significant that is, and how. But for them, it was just like what Corey just mentioned. It's like this molding of everyone's just this. We're all the same. No, wait. There's some things that are still sacred, and so that was on my mind. The other thing, but as it relates to this question of poetry, when I thought about this, I thought about all of the art that I saw growing up. And I perhaps was a little blessed because my father is a musician. My mother loved art. I was exposed. And so I'm very grateful for that, although I grew up in the country, right? But I remember my fourth grade teacher, Miss Martha Kraft at Phyllis Wheatley Elementary School in Port Arthur, Texas. And she, every day, her goal was to expose us to Black history. So we didn't have a 1 month. We had every single day we learned about inventors. We did everything from, we were exposed to the Harlem Renaissance artists. I learned about Faith Ringgold and Ramir Bearden and Cubism and modern art. As a fourth grader, I learned she would read the poetry of Langston Hughes. She would talk about the folklore of Zora Neale Hurston. She taught us, because I had never learned it before, the lyrics to the Black National Anthem. And we sang it every day after we had to mandatorily sing the Star Spangled Banner and stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. And it made me proud. It made me proud because it introduced me beyond my family, beyond my church, beyond my community. It allowed me, as a little Black girl in the 70s, who was really being raised not even a decade beyond segregation, to be proud of my Blackness. I was proud of my Blackness. And the artwork that stands out to me, and it sounds so silly when I say it, but it's true, is the TV sitcom Good Times. And when Good Times would come on, the Sugar Shack was the depiction of Ernie Barnes. And it was vibrant. It was, you could feel the movement. You could see the distorted bodies and the exaggerated features. And I would study that. And I would listen to this song and I thought, where are they? Because I don't, where, but and I'm being honest, I share a surname with Ernie Barnes. So it also intrigued me that here is this person who had my last name, whose artwork was being depicted on this show. And I looked for it every time that the show came on. And it meant something to me. It was like, it meant the world to me, because it felt like it was exposing my culture, right? And sadly, the messages that, I think that Miss Craft was trying to express when she was exposing us in 1977 was the messages, it's still the same. It's like it was prophetic. The things that James Baldwin spoke of, that Nina Simone spoke of, I'm using celebrities, but the folks that were in our churches, the prophetic messages are still applicable. And how sad is that? And that we've seen an entire generation or two through this evolution. And now we're stepping all the way back. We're stepping back. And so, I am also reminded to not be afraid and to not think that it's the end, because our forefathers went through so much more than what they're going through now. So that perhaps wasn't an academic response, but that was a true, hey, what's the first
I didn't ask for an academic response. I asked for your response. That's why y'all are here. Ask for your response.
Right.
Okay, I saw Faith's hand go up, so we're gonna go to Faith next.
Hi. So I have two. For music, it's definitely Nina Simone. I remember as a child, my mom playing her albums in our house loud. And the song that really, I can hear her soulful voice, like I get chills right now when I think of it, is Young, Gifted, and Black. And my mom took me to see her in one of her last concerts in 2000, and I felt just so blessed to be in such greatness. Nina Simone, and I can't tell you how old she was then, but she sounded amazing. And the other work of art that I had a chance to experience, again, my mom, she always took me to a lot of culturally appropriate events, because there's some that weren't, was Lena Horne. Lena Horne had a stage play, and I was really young, but I just remember seeing this beautiful woman on stage at the, I think it was the Pavilion downtown LA. But those two women and being a child really impacted me. And singing To Be Young, Gifted, and Black as a little kid, I had no idea that in 2025 that we would be going through what we're going through. I thought it was always going to be progression, not regression. And just to look at and not look at, as Lena was saying, not wanting to hear the news, but knowing we have to know, because I don't want to hear it. I don't want to see it, because it makes me really sad, because it's like 20 steps forward and 150 steps backwards. But those two women had a great impact on my life, and just music. And Lena Horne was just an artist.
Okay, thank you. Professor, how we doing over here? I see your hand.
Yes, well, Miss Ford stole my thunder. We're Ernie Barnes, but I'll break it down for those that don't know. The Sugar Shack shows our beautiful Blackness in a juke joint with our beautiful shapes and bodies. And it was first introduced on Good Times, but everybody might not know that JJ all the paintings he did was by Ernie Barnes. And then we saw it in the Huxtables, all their paintings. Then it was Columbo, the White Shadow, Dream On, the Hughleys, the Wayans Brothers, White Slop, Soul Food, Drumline, and Boys in the Hood. And the Sugar Shack, because Ernie Barnes unfortunately passed away, but the Sugar Shack sold for $15.2 million. And his art cannot be used without the family's permission. So he has taken blackness to the highest level. There is no Twiggy in his art. So we are to be celebrated, our curves, our beautifulness, our blackness. And that's what we owe Ernie Barnes. It's okay to be thick and us.
All right. Amen to that. All right, Oni.
You know, I grew up I'm the granddaughter of the lead singer of the Shy-Lights, Eugene Records. So I grew up in a household with music that talked about love and family and community and but also family members who are in the arts in the film industry. My aunt Cass Will Smith in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And so art and music has been instilled in me. But what I would like to talk about as my first like work of literature that profoundly impacted me is Harriet Washington's Medical Apartheid. And the reason why is because I grew up as a child in the hospital. I had a lot of medical issues and, being treated by doctors that don't look like me. And now, as an adult, being treated by doctors who do look like me because I seek them out, being able to be heard and understood, it's extremely important. The book talks about a long history of medical racism against Black people in the United States. And it's not just happening here, it's happening everywhere. But particularly in the United States, and talking about systematic healthcare disparities. And today, we're seeing in the news the Black mother mortality rates higher than any other race. I mean, it's so critical that we look and talk and bring awareness and advocacy to the medical field for Black and brown and people of color, but Black women in general. And so that is my first work. It's my work right there.
Okay, well, thank you for that. So you all brought up a variety of things, and Henrietta Lacks saved my life. Erica has put that in the chat a multiplicity of times, and so that's it's a good story to remember. It's important for us to recognize that a lot of the treatment that we receive got anchored in the culture, based on a couple of things. One, people who had no science background thinking that they could take zoology and apply it to human beings based on phenotypic expression, just the color of your skin. So obviously there's something different about you, something wrong with you. And then the birth of a nation. The movie that depicted Black people in such a terrible light, that was played at the White House of all things. And Ida B. Wells and many other people fought in many places to keep that movie from being shown, because they knew how damaging it was. These stories are anchored in some of the work of Madison Grant, who was an attorney, not a medical doctor. And that book became the playbook for Hitler. And so these are the things that we need to know about the literature that sometimes is out there, where we may be central features of that, but not in a good way. So thank you for sharing your stories. I think the Cosby Show did amazing things. I think A Different World did amazing things for the Black community. However, we got caught in the craziness of Bill Cosby's personal life and him not necessarily being an okay human being. But that doesn't dismiss all the work that he did. I will never defend his bad behavior. That's not what we're here for. But what we can never take away from any of our people is the work that they've done, that made the world a better place. Now, if you haven't done anything, you just haven't done anything. I'm not gonna ride with you just because skin folk ain't all of them ain't kin folk. So I think it's important that when we raise these, we also say we understand that there's a mixed emotion and mixed message, that we will never take away from the artist work, and what their contributions have been for the good of not just the people, but for humanity as a whole, in being able to see these stories and hear these stories. But we're complicated because we're humans. And so we got complicated stuff. And just because you got complicated stuff doesn't mean that you can't do good, but it also doesn't mean that we don't hold people accountable for their mess. So I want to make sure we do that. How do we counter the negative narratives and stereotypes that have been anchored in some of our music, movies and sitcoms that are popular and maybe the only images of Black or African American people others see? And the reason why I ask this question is because in this interesting place that we're in the cycle that we've been in, there's been a lot of talk about Black artists who were who kind of jumped on the newly elected president's bandwagon, and were supportive, but not because this person was a good person but because of the financial things, right? And so there's some interesting negative messages. But then I went and started listening to some of the music out here you don't need in your spirit. And I do not need to know what color your body parts are. I really don't. I don't need to know how they work or how often you flip-flop them or any of those things. But that is what's anchored in many of the songs that are out here today. The derogatory language around Black women. I'm sorry, my mama didn't name me bitch. And so you can't call me. Right? And so how do we counter that, seeing as this is what they're inundated with, both in what they hear and in what they see?
Well, I keep going first, so let me take a stab at this. I was going to say that there obviously is a need for introspection within the Black community. There is, I don't know, we just have a lot of we have some cultural divides that I've noticed, and they often go unaddressed. There are things that, we learned in the 70s, 80s, 90s that would have been totally inappropriate then, that have become the norms. Like one example would be wearing a hair bonnet in public. I mean, I guess I'm showing my age. I don't understand why you bought the bonnet. The bonnet is to protect your hair so that when it's time to leave, your hair looks nice. Why are you wearing the bonnet in public? Why are you wearing house slippers in public? What that is, my grandmother, I can just see her turning over in her grave, because that just is that wasn't allowed. It wasn't acceptable. But then whose fault is that? Is it my fault as a 50-some-odd-year-old person who didn't say maybe to a younger sister? I don't know if that's appropriate, but is it my place? Who am I to tell someone in the 2020s what they can or should or shouldn't do? I mean, it's a very interesting dynamic in the stance that we're doing around one another. And so I would think that, speaking from my perspective as a community leader, not as a political strategist or anything like that, but just as the head of a civic organization, I wish that we could, and my goal in my branch of the NAACP is to introduce some, community-led initiatives, some more public forums, some more, educational programming to get us all back on an even ground. Like what do we do within the entertainment industry? Bring those folks in to help them help us with spreading these narratives. Like, what do they say? If you we just need to amplify our Black voices, our authentic Black voices. And sometimes I get frustrated with entertainers because who they are at home is not necessarily who they portray themselves to be or who they are expected to be in the public. And I know that's money. I'll use Snoop Dogg as a perfect example. We just saw what he did with Trump, but forget that, go back 20 years. And I remember when he had a show, he was one of the first to have a reality show, and he filmed from home. Well, he wasn't in this huge mansion. I don't know where he lived in a very normal home. And there's one particular episode I remember where his children wanted to buy a particular rap album. And he said, oh, no, and he wouldn't allow them to buy this music from another artist. And it wasn't because he was competing. It was because he didn't want that message to be inundated. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? I had never thought about that before. You are one of the rappers that everyone around the world knows, not just nationally, but internationally. And your message is about cannabis and this, that, and the other. But you don't want your kids to listen to the same type of music. And so that has always stuck with me, that this is all, like you mentioned earlier, this is all about money. This is you follow the money, follow the resources. Decisions that are made are not necessarily made for what's good for all of us. And then I just know that it's key that we, use our advocacy, use our voices. We're not monolithic, and we just have to find that. We've got to find that that common ground where we're not offending each other, where we're not crossing a boundary, where we're not violating personal space and choice, but we're reminding, especially younger people, but not just younger people my age, we need to remind folks of where we've come from, what we've been through, what we don't want to go back through. And that's what I thought we were doing during the last couple of years, but hey, I'm kind of digressing. So that's my response. I hope that's enough.
Thank you. Who wants to go next?
I'll dive in real quick. I was sharing this with Corey because for my research, I grabbed real quick post-traumatic slave syndrome, and I can't put it down. And so we have the big Black umbrella, but then when you narrow down specifically African Americans, we got a 500-year legacy that's very complex. And so it took an insurrection for Aunt Jemima, Uncle Ben, and Mrs. Butterworth got skinny. But this goes back to the Jezebel, the Sapphire, and the Mammy to cover up the rapes and the everything else and that was going on. So now you get into the media mixing around and playing with that again. See, it's complex. But when you got a 500-year legacy of these beatings of pitting light skin against dark skin, and to do that oppression and that group control, it's going to carry on to the rappers. You get them to continue to put the women down and this and that and the hide, the economics and the stealing and the thieving. And then you're going to throw more money. I'd see it's a system, it's a cycle. The book is good. I forgot to put that on your list.
We'll add it for next week.
It's that cycle like we were talking earlier. So it's the thing. But the book is good, so I suggest it for everyone.
Okay. I saw Faith put her hand up, so we want to go to her.
So it's very interesting when we don't approach these subjects. And I have 2 teenagers that live with me right now, and they always have the bonnet on, and they ask, can they go out in the pajamas? And I'm like, take the bonnet off, go put some clothes on. And I think it has a lot to do with just being passive. Passive with the N-word, passive with just our interactions. And like you said, your mom didn't raise a bee, and don't call me that. And as time evolved, because I'm older, and I remember just with my family, they used to make my clothes because they couldn't just go shopping anywhere. Back in the day, it wasn't allowed. But I think that when you have young people and you have access to them, if you can teach them, like Erica said, Snoop, he told his kids no. But what he sells to support them is completely different. But what he wants for his family is something else. And it's the same thing when I see people out in their pajamas and house shoes, and I just look and I wonder, did they just roll out of the bed? Because I saw someone said that their grandmother would be upset. I know my grandmother would be like just having a fit. And I think it has to go back to us educating our youth and teaching them pride and pride in their dress and showing them the black and white pictures from the 40s and the 50s and how our ancestors dressed sharp as a tack
They were sharp.
and took pride with stockings and hats and gloves and tailored clothes because they couldn't go to Macy's, which whatever it was called back in the day. So they made their clothes and they lined them with silk. And so I think it's, something that we have to teach them, that I think that a lot of lessons are not being taught. And you guys are making me think, after this, I'm gonna go in there and sit them down and pull out some photos. And because I'm always take off the bond and you're not wearing that outside, but I need to go deeper and delve more into it. And it's just educating, it's having those hard conversations. Because they're always stuck in their electronics and like if and when you watch the news, you see them interviewing people, they're in their pajamas. And I wasn't allowed to even go get the newspaper or the mail in my pajamas. Pajamas are inside clothes only. So I think it's just, going back to just teachable moments.
Yeah. Yes, Corey. I saw your hand.
Thank you. This question was packed with so much information and so many answers, and there's so many ways we could go about answering the question. And I think it's impossible for us to answer all
Right.
4 parts of the question.
It's
But
okay.
just to piggyback off of what everyone has said, well, I'm a millennial, and my kids are Gen Z, the next one after me. But the way I was raised, it's a time and place for everything. And I think that that has been forgotten, especially in the Black community and household. I know our elders, my grandmother told my mom that, there's my great grandmother to my grandmother, to my mom, to me, and even with my children, I tell them there's a time and place for everything. And that has been forgotten on so many millennials because a lot of millennial parents are too busy trying to be friends with their children. And there's not that big of a age gap because nowadays it's looked, I guess it's you know looked held in high regards to the earlier you can push out a kid the better. But when I was growing up, it was, you wait to get your education, you want to get married, and there's an order of things. Unfortunately, that wasn't my order, but it's okay. I'm a different person. But like I said, it's a time and place for everything. And like you said, coming out the house in bonnets and house shoes. And like I always tell my sons, you can't do what the next person does. And so we as Black people, we have to remember that we can't do what everybody else does. We're not going to get the same acceptance, and it may not be favorable when we do something that somebody else does. I have twin sons, and they went to a small, intimate middle school. And my big twin, he was very lovable, very likable, and you weren't supposed to wear socks with different designs or colors on them. Now he would go to school with different character socks, and they wouldn't say anything to him. But my skinny twin would go, and he would have his socks, and they'd always write him up or call him out for it. And he's like, "Well, he can do it, but I can't." Say, there you go. You got to remember, you can't do what everybody else does, and that's what I also remind myself. And every day when I get up, I let myself know that, hey, I can't do what she does. I have to walk in my own truth, and I can't compare myself to the next person. And so I know I'm trying to figure out. So the younger generation, I think that the problem is the older people, their parents aren't well informed. A lot of them aren't well informed. And we can't expect them to educate their children when they don't have the education themselves to pass it down.
That's true. That's true. Thank you for that.
I'll answer real quick. I'll just keep it short. I think just, one of the ways to counter negative portrayals is really uh, we need to amplify our authentic voice, our authentic stories, and we need to do it in the media, in literature, in film, in education, in all these realms that all generations are tapping into, in the news. And these narratives need to be about the brilliance, the joy, the struggle, because the struggle is real, but also the triumphs of us. And we also need to, I'm part of a couple of groups on Facebook. Black women love Target, Black women love Costco, Black women love Trader Joe's, all of them. And like having these conversations about DEI or the rollback of DEI. And are we going to shop at these places where they're rolling back DEI? Are we going to hold these companies, these corporations, where we're spending our money accountable? And so, holding these corporations accountable and being intentional with our perspectives and our conversations and our portrayal to the outside world. Yes.
Yes. No, that's important and significant. And it'll be interesting to see where we land with how do we hold other folks accountable in this season. How do we in the little spaces that we have. I see Erica's hand up. I want to
I just want to say, I wanted to add just one more thing about this subject and about how do we address these issues. I in my mind, and I think of my words. I changed my dissertation topic because I wanted to center Black women. And I think that in this academy that we need to, as researchers, as academics, we really need to center in the scholarship the Black narrative. It isn't always appreciated. Like even to this day, I always remember being exposed to the Black narratives from the slave narratives that were recorded many years ago, but towards obviously in the early 1900s. And we hold on to those records so closely, and we listen to, when you listen to the video, listen to the recordings, every word, and yet we don't always center in this century the Black story. We don't always center it, and I just think that that's something that we need to prioritize. That it shouldn't be. I shouldn't have. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I'll tell this story real quick. When I was in my undergrad program, and some of you probably know the story already, I was in my undergrad program. I thought I was an English lit major. One day we do this audit. I find out, no, I'm a history major. What? I'm taking classes that I'm just naturally gravitating to. And then I realized, oh, I have as many African-American studies credits as I do American history credits. So I'm going to double major. That's what I say. And they say, oh, no. You can't major in African-American studies. Wait, why? Well, it's just, you can't earn enough credits. Well, no, I have 44 credits in this under this category. Why can't I? So I'm looking at the catalog. I can major in Korean studies. I can major in Russian studies. I can even major in something that was called the Holocaust studies. But I can't major in African-American studies in an American institution. I can only minor. No. And so I proceeded then, and I should have known I was a social justice warrior even back then, because I remember going to the dean and I petitioned the school, and we ended up doing a self-design major so that I could in fact graduate with both my history BA and my Africana studies BA. But I had to stay an extra year in a self-designed program, but it was the principal. And so our contributions, sometimes obviously we're acknowledged, but not nearly enough. And I'm just hoping that academicians, and not just Black academicians, male, female, no matter what your ethnicity, can, just as we see value in everyone else's culture, that there is a value placed in us, and understanding that as I think it was Jay that said this, or maybe it was Corey, African American history is American history. Black history is American history. All of this is American history. And so it's insulting. But then again, I know that there's room for growth. So I just wanted to say that. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm taking over the conversation.
No, and that's important. And so for those who are listening in, let me say this. To anchor and focus in on who you are uniquely does not exclude other folks. But when it comes to Black or African American people anchoring in and saying, we're doing this because our people need this, it automatically gets misconstrued as reverse racism. And so I want to debunk that story right here and right now. Other groups are able to anchor in and say, this is about family, this is about us. That doesn't mean it's to the exclusion of anyone else. When we're good, the people around us are good. When we're not good, the people around us are not good. So I want us to kind of own that the mythical stories that we receive about the United States to all of our detriment, not just to one group, but to all of our detriment, is that somehow to want your people to be okay is somehow wrong. It is not wrong. That's the myth that people that are all about capitalism and making money off everybody else without having to raise a finger. That's the story they need to tell in order to keep the myth alive, because that's not the truth. I have a couple more questions, but I think we'll only do one. Are y'all okay if I kick the four-part question out? Number one, it was a good question, but it's a little deep for where we are right now. We could have this conversation forever, but what I want to do is, because I want to leave some time for people to jump in and ask questions of you all as the panelists. So we've talked a lot about who we are, what we offer, what our stories are, personal stories, connecting those to community and national, international stories. We know we're not a monolith. We recognize that our story doesn't start in slavery. Unbeknownst to other people, that's not where we start. Many Black people that were on the continent called the United States of America, this part of America, this part of North America, they weren't all enslaved. Many of them were indentured servants. Many of them were free. So to start our story in enslavement is a misnomer, and it is dishonest. And we've got to stop that. That's not where our story begins, and it's definitely not where our story ends. It's not who we all are. We are a multiplicity of things, and so I want us to own that. But as I look at our history, as I look at who we are, as I look at the people that contribute to our story, what I want to know is, who have we overlooked? Like Black history, we know that for years growing up, we heard about Martin Luther King, we heard about Frederick Douglass, we heard about George Washington Carver, Carter G. Woodson. We would talk about Ida B. Wells every now and then. We would hear about Harriet Tubman, but we often missed out on some of these other voices, and we minimized Malcolm X to a space that is not honest or okay. And so I'm wondering, as we sit here tonight, who are some of these important people that we've overlooked that we need to claim their stories, reclaim their stories, bring them to the forefront so that people get an even more broad vision of just how diverse we are as a people and the goodness that our diversity brings to the table. So I saw a couple of hands, so we'll start with Faith this time. We generally don't start with Faith, so we'll start with Faith.
So it's very interesting when I read this question, because everyone you mentioned came to mind. And I said, oh, I want to go do some research on this one. And I couldn't remember his name, but I started looking up Black architectures. So I just learned some history myself. And there's one person that I never heard of, and his name is Julian Abel. He was born in 1881 and he died in 1950. And he was the first Black student admitted to the architecture school at the University of Pennsylvania. And he graduated in 1902. So he traveled to Europe after graduation, and that really influenced his work. And one of his greatest work of arts that I never knew that a Black man had designed was on the campus of Duke University.
Yes.
He designed the University Chapel, the Allen Administration Building, and the Duke Indoor Stadium. And the Duke's Quad is named after him, and it's called the Abo Quad, and it was named after him in 2016. There's so many Black architects that have so many works of art in our country that, you know, this gentleman died in 1950 before my time, but in my history lessons and growing up, I never heard of him. So I just wanted to highlight just one of the many famous Black architectures that imagine being the first student admitted to a university, and way back in the late 1800s. And I can't imagine what he went through, but he persevered and went on to engineer some of Duke University's finest works of architecture. Thank you.
Thank you. Corey, I see your hand, and then we'll go to Professor after that.
Mia had her hand up first. Do you want to go, Mia?
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so I'll use a little. This story won't sound as good without a little, ethnic flavor to it. So this is actually an important group. They're called the Kawate. You know them as the Cherokee, because here's the thing. They were actually secret abolitionists, and they paid $2,000 for a Black Cherokee to keep her free. Her name is Elizabeth, and she's going to lead them on the Trail of Tears. And the Black Seminole are going to come to protect her. And she's going to cry because 15,000 of her Black and Indigenous people are going to die on this trail. See, $2,000 is a lot of money to keep somebody free. And turns out the Cherokee ran game on the colonists from day one. So they weren't holding slaves the way you thought. And all 5 tribes ran game. They went to the auction block, bought African men, married them, created stronger babies to fight the colonists. There's so much more to tell. So we owe a lot to those 5 supposedly slaveholding tribes. There's a lot to tell. So power to the people, my indigenous Black people.
All right. Corey was next.
That was great.
Okay, so this was a great question. When I saw this question, I was just like, oh, I love it. The person for me that came to mind was Charlotte E. Ray. I was introduced to her back in high school. I had a history class called Women in America, or Women in History in America, or something crazy. But I had a white teacher, I can't remember her name, love her, Miss Tompkins, introduced me to Charlotte Ray. So Charlotte Ray was the first Black American female lawyer in the United States. She graduated from Howard University, of course. She was admitted in 1872. She was also the first female admitted into the District of Columbia Bar. She was the first to practice before the Supreme Court in the District of Columbia. her admission was always used as a precedent for women in other states who sought admission into the bar. So she set a precedence just not for Black women, but for women, period. She opened up her own law office in Washington, D.C. And I know Mia's going to love this. She ran her advertising in the newspaper run by Frederick Douglass. And however, she only practiced law for a few years because of the prejudice against Black people, and women were made, and women, back then, if this was the 1800s, and women got their voting rights in 1920, so women were definitely a non-factor. But she definitely set the bar high, and I think she inspired me to want to go to Howard University, and also in undergrad, my focus was legal communication. So I was supposed to be a corporate attorney, but that didn't happen. But yes, but Charlotte Ray has always been someone that has been dear and has always been embedded in my brain as a child. And she's definitely an unsung and an unforgotten hero in the Black community, American history.
Thank you. Thank you.
See how the stories are connected? I tell you, you can't separate it.
Yep. Erica, and then Jayoni.
So for me, the person that's gone unsung, and I can appreciate all of the statements that you guys have just made. I just put in the chat, by the way, that I think that the Seminoles, one is the Seminoles and the Cherokees were the indigenous, either the Gullah or the Geechee. One group were the Angolan Africans who basically escaped and formed their own community, but they were aided by Seminoles. And so most people don't know those stories either, because they love to say that Black and brown people that we were, it was very interesting to me that during the last, I would say 50 years, almost all of us grew up knowing that we had some indigenous relatives, and we would, everybody would say, oh no, we're Cherokee, or we're so-and-so, or we're whatever the tribe was. And then suddenly it became, no, you're not. There's no Black people are related to, y'all are making that up. And now it's going to sound very bad. Now I see folks like on Ancestry.com who are blonde haired and blue eyed, and they are, quote, indigenous. Where did that happen? I was like, when did that happen? So, so anyway, let me not get off track. I was going to say that the person that I think of, though, that is a totally unsung hero is a woman named Zerona Clayton. Zerona Clayton lives here in Atlanta. I absolutely love this lady. She's like 94 years old. She's a spitfire. She is so energetic. She worked with, I think, SCLC, maybe the Urban League back in the 60s. She worked with Dr. King. She was one of the secretaries who was doing all of that administrative work. And so in my research, especially with my dissertation topic, one of the things that I did was I researched women's movements, and how we as Black women were incorporated or not. And in essence, we've continued to be marginalized, right? We know that our position, the positionality of Black women is an odd position. We worked with the suffrage movement, but we were not considered equal to those women who were leading the movement, all right? Even though we were there, we were working, we were doing the grunt work, we were still not, it wasn't for us, right? Then you move forward to the civil rights movement. It's hard to admit, but it's true that there was still a lot of patriarchy, even within, we know how Black men are. So white, Black, have you ever really noticed that a lot of Black women were not at the forefront? We were kind of relegated to different positions. We did the administrative work, we organized, we put it together, but we weren't the face that was the representative face of the movement, right? But people like Zerona Clayton were in the room with Dr. King and Ralph Abernathy and folks like that. So I live in Georgia. It is, these names and these folks are very familiar to me, but I realize in my travel around the nation and around the world that most people don't know who these folks are. And she is truly an unsung hero. This young lady, she's physically beautiful. She's beautiful. She looks like she's in her 60s. She's 94 years old. She is still up and around. They did a couple of years ago, maybe about 15 or 20 years ago, they started doing something called the Trumpet Awards that was made it was Ted Turner who decided to do these trumpet awards in honor of Zerona Clayton and those folks who were giving back in the community. And I mean, she's just a treasure to have. But a lot of people, like I said, don't know her. And now folks are now starting to talk about, you know, Miss Brayboy or Ella Baker and folks like that who were vocal, representing their constituencies or their branches of the NAACP or the SCLC or whatever. But that's a name that I think every American, should know, because she's just as significant a part of the civil rights movement as a Ralph Abernathy or a Dr. King. She's in the room. You know what I mean? If she's in the room and taking notes and giving and apparently sharing ideas, that's a voice and a name that we should have already known beyond, bless her soul, Mrs. Rosa Parks. So again, like you said, acknowledging one is not acknowledging one person is not in any way taking away from the influence of another. This is just another Black woman who I feel like was never given her due diligence, her due. And I you know, she'll never see this, I'm sure, but let it be known in the that Erica spoke up on behalf of Mrs. Zerona Clayton.
Well, we thank you for that. I see you're talking about Ella Baker. Ella Baker was in the room, and Ella Baker didn't like some of those men, and she was okay with saying it. You know, she was really clear. I don't have to agree with you to understand that there's something bigger at stake. We not friends. We ain't gotta like each other. I don't have to like what you're doing, but I know that there's something bigger at stake, and I think that that is the spirit in which we have to start doing some things. We don't have to be buddies, but there's something bigger at stake. So how we get this done, right? How do we do this? I want to make sure that we get Jay Oni in here.
Oh, it's good because it's funny you talk about Ella Baker. I in 2015 I had the opportunity to meet Julian Bond, and you know, working with like 2 months before he passed, and it was just having a brief conversation with him and understanding, like, you know, his work and how tremendous and how remarkable and important it is for our community. And then him working with her, with Ella Baker, and Diane Nash, who's phenomenal. Like, she needs her pearls. You know, a civil rights strategist and nonviolent organizer. I'm I'm the board chair for an organization called Human Rights Action Center, which was founded by Jack Healy, who was the director for Amnesty International, and he's worked with Diane. So I've had the opportunity to meet her and just briefly chat with Diane, and just the knowledge, being able to just receive and then hopefully impart that into you know, future people is so important. But the other person I really want to give acknowledge to is Joanne Bland. Joanne Bland, I also had the opportunity to meet her, and she is just a phenomenal woman. She was a co-founder of the National Voting Rights Museum, and she's an operator of the Journey for the Soul tour. And being able to take that civil rights tour and understand the history of the civil rights is so important, and it, especially for today, for the political climate that we're in right now, we really need to lean on the folks who went through the civil rights movement and hear what they have to say. Like, yes, the strategies have changed and they need to adapt, but knowing where we come from and how we can adapt them is crucial to getting to where we can be in the future.
Yes, and that was one of the concerns that Andrew Young had about Black Lives Matters. He voiced his concern and got kicked a few times by the younger generation without really listening. Because what he was saying was, it's more than just showing up and protesting, because the protests will only last so long, but the work is generational, intergenerational. And so you've got to have strategy, and you've got to be trained. and so there was some pushback about the training piece. But you know, we know that who just a person that just became an ancestor over the summer is Jim Lawson, who was living in California. Reverend Jim Lawson got kicked out of seminary at Vanderbilt for training these young people on how to do nonviolent action in the face of great oppression and racism in order to get their point across. And so there was a method and a madness, but these people were trained. And I think that that's one of the things that's missing in today's conversation, is that this is intergenerational work, and it didn't start in the 60s. This started back in, you know, in the 1800s. And so, and it was this continuation of fighting. You know, we pass the mantle, we light the torch of the next generation, in order for them to do the running and the work that this is our run and this is our work in this generation. We can't do it if we don't know what was done back here, what was successful and what wasn't successful, and how to pivot, right? Like, so, and this is the reason for these conversations, right? We get a lot of good information. We get exposed to some new voices and some new people that we may not have heard of, because it's not part of the natural ether that we're a part of. You have to go digging for our information. It's also the reason why we're giving you a book list. So the floor is open for anyone who wants to engage with our panelists tonight. Do you have questions, thoughts, other things that we need to think of before we end our time? Anybody?
Well, let me add, I'm going to add something else. Well, and I'm so glad Jayoni just shared her story about Julian Bond. One of my first friends in Atlanta is Michael Julian Bond. I'm friends with the family. Horace, we call him Manny. The other brother's name is Jeffrey. Phyllis and Cookie are the two sisters. I've been friends with them since I was about 14 years old. And when I went to work with the city of Atlanta, I worked with Michael when he ran for the first time. He goes by Michael Julian Bond. And every now and then I forget the fact that I'm literally in the middle of the civil rights movement, that this lineage is right, that I'm surrounded by it. I kind of take it for granted. I was very good friends at one. I'm friends with Marty III. I am friends with Maynard Jackson's son, Buzzy. I am very close to the Andrew Young's family. And so with that said, I sit in this really unique spot, right? And the thing that when you just said, Sharletta, that this is intergenerational and it didn't just start in the 60s, and you're so correct. Michael has a picture. He has a picture of Albert Einstein and his grandfather. What people don't know is that the Bond family, the grandmother's name is Julia. She's now deceased. She owned a building. It was a fourplex, like a quadruplex, right at the entrance of Spelman College in Morehouse, literally right at the circle. And she lived there until she died. And Uncle James Bond lived on the bottom level. But they entertained some of the most brilliant minds, W.E.B. Du Bois and again, Einstein. And there are these photos, these family photos from just dinner, right? But with his grandfather. So his mother, Michael Bond's mother, his name is Alice, her father was named Horace. God, what was his last name? It wasn't Horace Bond. It was Horace something. I can't remember the last name. But the interconnection between the maternal and the paternal families, how they are viewed within the Black community, especially within academia, not just at the AU Center, but also at Howard and in other institutions throughout the country. It is a powerful, it's a powerful testament of what it took and what was necessary to bring to fruition the changes that took place, especially during the civil rights movement. And so, so I'm glad that Jayoni got to meet him before he passed. And, we were always a little bit afraid of Mr. Bond, just a little bit, because he was very quiet. He was kind of very, stoic, and whereas the son is a dancer and having fun and, you know, just a totally different personality. But that's what I know for sure is that what was passed on to those children and to people around them like myself is the importance of civic engagement, the importance of telling stories and keeping these narratives alive, correcting a lie before it becomes a truth, and working and giving back, even if it doesn't pay any money. Because that's the other thing that we never really talk about. Nobody made any money in the civil rights movement. you don't make money when you stand up and give a speech at church. You don't get a salary when you're the president of the NAACP. You would, I mean, unless on the national level, but not on the local level. You're a volunteer. And so you have to really, there's a spirit that's within certain people. And when you talk about how do we make these changes and keep these things going, how do we tell these stories and keep these narratives, correct these narratives? I mean, it is something that is, I think, internal. I think it's within all of us, but it's just been emphasized in our particular community because we needed something to hold on to. And it's like you just said, it's okay. It's okay to have that and to prioritize that. If we could get our younger people and other folks to just recognize that we're in this together, oh wow, what a better place this would be. So
I saw Mary's hand was up. Is it Mary Caitlin? I want to acknowledge that I saw your hand. Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to say when I was in high school, I'm 65 now. Jesse Jackson came and spoke at our school. And I was able to go to that assembly. And the thing that stuck with me all these years was his statement, I am somebody. I may be Black, but I am somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody. And we need more Black leaders to go back to visiting schools, giving assemblies, speaking on the way that the past will bring them to the future. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Is it Connie? Did you want to say something?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I want to thank this team for speaking to us. And the lady who just spoke about schools, thank you. We need to show these young people the way and the true way because they have their own ways. That's not necessarily the right way. They need us to help them. I'm very glad to see Corey McQueen. Corey, say hi to your mother. I thank Miss Green for just being the facilitator for this group. And Black history is American history. It is world history. I'm a teacher. I worked at Washington Prep High School. I work at Crenshaw High School. We need brilliant minds like you to go to these high schools and save our youth. The governor just made a law. They cannot use phones in the classes anymore. So hopefully the grades will improve. We need more laws, policies to help them, our young people.
Yes. So thank you for that. I do want to acknowledge that we are living in unprecedented times. So the things that we used to be able to do, we may not be able to do. We're gonna have to go back and grab some things from the ancestors and do Rush Arbor ministry and teaching. So we may not be able to come to your school, but we may be able to have a forum somewhere else where people need to bring their kids. If you can take your kids to a basketball game, a football game, you can come, you can bring them to let them hear about who they are and the greatness that they come from and what they can add to the story. We're gonna have to move differently in the world today. We're not gonna be able to do things frontal. We may have to move sideways a little bit. And that is as much about protecting ourselves as it is about protecting our story. You know, so this is the reality that we've inherited, And we want to make sure that you go away with tools. So the book list is in the chat. We'll be adding more to it. If you're not able to make it to our last event next week, which is on the 27th, put your email in the chat. We will save that, and we will send you the last updated one for the month. As we've talked, we have really and truly highlighted that this is a communal experience, that learning about who we are is not just us reading books, but it's about connecting us to the story and us telling our own stories and telling our stories and how those stories connect to other people's stories and how we're all interconnected in this, and it's generational. If we I don't know about you, how many of you remember sitting down to the table and eating on Sundays where it was mom and grandma and aunties and uncles and great aunts and uncles? Anybody remember that? We don't do that much anymore. and we need to start doing that, because what it taught us, whether we knew it or not, is it taught us our family story, but it also taught us our community story. It also taught us how to engage with people at different levels from different generations, because everybody's different. We all learned how to navigate with the uncle that said things that were not quite okay. We all learned how to navigate with the cousin who was a little sideways. We all learned how to navigate our family systems that helped us then navigate the world systems that we were inheriting, because our families are just a microcosm of the bigger world that we're a part of. And so I think it's really important that we find ways of connecting in community, because that's what's going to save us. The law won't save us. The government won't save us. The Democrats, the Republicans, and any of these other people, they're not going to save us. We will save us because it's about us taking care of us and making the world a better place, because we're all in it. So we know that DEI has become the new N word. And I don't know if any of you were here for the Reverend Dr. John Kinney, who basically reminded me that I needed to spend some more time with my Latin, because he said DEI, to get rid of DEI, the word imago Dei, which means the image of God, the imago, and it's Dei, DEI, which means God in Latin. DEI is Dei, God. He said to remove God. He said to remove the image of God, to remove anyone from this is to remove God from your presence, to remove God from the picture. And so I want us to remember that image, that they can take away the language, but they can't take us away. When you decide that you no longer want part of the image of God that is part of the world in your sphere, what you're saying is, all the rest of this is not important, and thus part of me is not important, because I'm connected to you and you're connected to me. We can't be who we are without the rest of the world. We just make up one small part, but all of us are the image of God, whatever you call God, in this bigger world. And without us, the world is incomplete. So action steps from this conversation: have conversations with young people. If there are places where they will invite you to come and speak without having, being bum rushed by police officers and people thinking that they should be able to silence you, do that. Create small groups and forums where you can have conversations like this with younger demographic of people. I know this is not going to be easy. This isn't easy work. I don't know about y'all, but I've had a lot of sleepless nights where all I could do was lay before God and just say, why? Why are we here once again? Didn't our ancestors fight this thing? What did we not get? And I think what we're not getting is that when something is built on a faulty foundation, that it will continue to crumble in a variety of different ways. And when there has not been true repentance, because you can tell somebody, I forgive you, but there's got to be some repentance. We can't just get over slavery. We can't just get over Jim Crow. We can't just get over misogyny and all the other things that you can think of, and the violence and the hurt and the harm. there's got to be a space of repentance. But if you don't believe you've done anything wrong, there will always be something that bubbles up in the spirit realm that claims and calls forth for there to be a reckoning and a healing. And this nation is screaming that it needs to be healed. And the healing starts with us telling our stories. It starts with us staying informed but not overwhelmed. Drink your water, get some rest, turn the news off, turn all the social media off, get before the God that you claim, whatever it is that you do that helps you to center in your faith, in your space, do that. Share truthful and factual information. Raise your voice, contact your reps. I don't care whether they're Republican, Democrat, or independent, or what something else. Call them up, send them emails, let them know that you're not okay. It may not change anything, but your voice at least has been heard. If there are some people so inclined, run for office. If you decide that you want to run for office, you see all these people in this room, get in touch with us. We will find a way to support you. We might only be able to send you $5 because, you know, graduate students and newly graduated students may not have a whole lot of money, but $5 here, $5 there will go a long way. We've seen this. We've watched our people build institutions on pennies. And so we know it can be done. You know, reward the good. When you see good stuff going on, talk about it, name it. If the organizations are doing something good, say something about it. But also those that are not, hold them accountable. Like this is the way things get changed, and it doesn't change overnight. So the reality is that we are building something today that we may not benefit from, but we're doing it for the next generation. This is not instant gratification work. That's not who we are. That's not where we are. This is not microwave, as social activism. That's not how that works. We have to create a conscious culture. And so no longer can we sit in this space and act like somebody else is going to do it. We are the somebodies. And I realize that we're busy, but see how many people are here tonight? There's 27 people in this room. Imagine what we can do with 27 people in various different places if we stay connected and we say, here's what's going on here, and here's what's going on here, and here's how you can get, and people know I will send you a text message and call you up when there's something going on. How many can testify to that one? This is what you need to know. We've got to do that today in ways that we haven't done it before. We are our brothers and sisters keepers. And it's not just about us as Black folk, it's about all folk. At the end of the day, yes, we understand that the challenge before us is that there's a group of people that want to erase us because they remind us of some of the worst activity in their own history. And they've got to figure out how to at least deal with that, ask for forgiveness on behalf of the ancestors for that, then ask how they've been complicit in that today and figure out how to move forward. That's not our work to do. But I will say that our work is to make sure that we keep having these kinds of conversations, that we provide safe space for each other. As we sat here tonight, we heard from people who live among some of the giants from the movement. We hear about the legacies that are a part of who we are, whether it was entertainment or schools or whatever. We heard about stories about families who understand that this struggle is generational, intergenerational, and we've got to raise a generation. And I don't know about y'all, I grew up in a neighborhood where if I got in trouble before I got home, somebody had called, right? That's gone because we don't live in community in the same way. But I want you to start seeing these children in the community as your children. And it doesn't mean that you need to correct them all the time. Sometimes they need us to listen. Ask them questions. What is it that you want to have an experience of in life? What is it that you want to see different? What do you want to do with your life? Sometimes part of the problem with our younger generation is they haven't been listened to. They haven't been poured into. And so it's just as much our responsibility to pour into these children as if they are our own. Show up to school board meetings. The Daughters of the Confederacy did these things. the Mothers of Liberty or whatever they call themselves, many of them do not have children in the school system, but they were real clear about getting books banned. Just as clear as they have been, we need to be just as clear showing up for our children. And our children are Black and white and brown. They speak English, they speak Spanish, they speak Arabic, they speak a lot of different languages. They're our babies. This is the next generation. We must invest in them in the same way that we were invested in. This is no time for us to punk out. Yep, I said it. It's not easy work. Nobody said it would be. And sometimes it's thankless work. Let's just own. Many of those activists that we hold up died penniless. Many of them worked out of their own pockets. Many of them died in disgrace, but now they've become amazing. King was one of the most despised human beings when he was assassinated. And now all we hear about is King and his colorblind, and that's not what he said, but that's what they say. So I want you to hear all of these things tonight because our stories are so important. Don't let somebody else write your story for you. Don't let somebody else tell the story for you. Know the story for yourself. Tell that story so that the next generation can get it and run with it. All we have is our word. And our word creates the world that we are in. The stories that we tell, the things that we imagine about who we are is what we cultivate and create in the world. Just as you heard us talk tonight, I need you to go and do these kinds of conversations with the people in your life and in your community. Remember who you are and whose you are, and that you have so much more to offer the world than the stereotypes that somebody else wants to put on us because they are fearful, crazy, broken, and they haven't figured it out yet. And so they got to tear somebody down in order for them to be okay. That's a wrap for us tonight. We're 4 minutes over. I'm going to pass it back to Dr. Lena so that she can tell you about what else is coming up. And then I will lead us out with a prayer and a blessing because I think that's what we need before we leave this place.
Thank you, Dr. Green. What an inspiring and motivational discussion, honestly. And back to just to your comment, in terms about language, language is our identity. You know, language is someone's identity, not only culture. So long as you exist, we exist. No one can take us away. Yes, they're not either they can't either take the language away. So a heartfelt thank you to our incredible doctoral students tonight, panelists, for sharing your journeys, your insights, and the narratives that will shape for sure the future of education, leadership, and advocacy. Your voices are powerful, and tonight's conversation is a reminder that the stories we tell and the work we do continue to pave the way for change. As we approach the final week for our Black History Month speaker series, I invite you all to join us for our closing session on Tuesday, February 27 at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, featuring Dr. Erlanger Turner. Dr. Turner will lead a critical conversation on Black mental health and the unique narratives surrounding Black men, an essential topic that we hope you will all engage with. And before we close, I want to take a moment to express my gratitude to the Center for Global Partnerships and Learning team for their dedication in making this series possible. Special thank you as well to Dr. Asia Ghazi for her support and contributions to this important work. Thank you, Dr. Gabby, Dr. Miramontes, for your leadership. Thank you all for being here tonight. We look forward to seeing you next week for our final session. Until then, take care and have a wonderful evening. And we, of course, after praying with Sharletta.
All right. Assume whatever position it is that is comfortable for you to pray. But if I don't see you, I can't pray for you. I need to look upon you and you need to look upon me because it is seeing the image of God in you and realizing how amazing and diverse we are, how beautiful we are, how great we are because of who God is. This day is etched in history. We made an impact for the next generation. The words we speak and what we did tonight will reverberate for history and for days to come. May each day that you draw breath, you speak a word that brings life and not death. May each season that you are allowed to live into allow you to grow into maturity, that you may share your story, your gifts, your light, your love, your witness, that someone else may be inspired to get on board. We are not free until every single person is free. And so we fight for freedom for all, not some. With each step that we take, may we be bold enough to claim that it is a step for the divine whose image we bear, and the goodness of a beloved community where all people are cared for, that none goes hungry, that none goes thirsty, none go unhoused, none are dealing with violence, but all needs are met. May we see the children in our community as our children and love and pour into them when their parents and families can't. May we be the change we desire to see in the world, that the world might become a better place, and America may become the thing that it writes on paper but has yet to live into, so that the country that claims to be the land of the free and the home of the brave may become the land of the free and the home of the loved and cared for. Go forth from this Zoom room with peace, with joy, with love, knowing that this is just a season that trouble does not last always, and that we're stronger than we thought we were. And we can do this work because we're still here. And the God that we claim, who claims us, trust us in this moment to do the work that we've all been sent in the world to do. Be beautiful, you, and share your gifts with the world. We desperately need it. Go forth in peace. Ashe.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Dr. Sharletta Green. And thank you, everyone, for being here tonight.
Thank you. I totally enjoyed talking with you guys. I hope we can do this again. I need to have more